Stanton and the Miami Marlins travel to New York to face the Mets.
Left right field towards the corner.
The pregame's at 3:30 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 4:30. Saturday on ESPN Radio.
We're coming to you from the DraftKings.com podcasting studios. DraftKings.com, America's one-day fantasy sports site, where it's like a new season every time you play. DraftKings.com.
From ESPN's Pod Center, this is NBA Lockdown.
All right, welcome into another edition of the NBA Lockdown podcast alongside Amin, Elhassan. I'm Jorge Sedano. So, Amin, man, I don't know what to tell you, but if I'm the Atlanta Hawks, I'm not feeling good about last night, and obviously for a number of reasons. Now, there is some better news about DeMarre Carroll. It didn't look good yesterday, but it looks like no structural damage, and he is day-to-day and questionable for Game 2. So that's obviously great news because, first of all, he had such a good season, and he was up for a payday this year, so you didn't want the Wesley Matthews situation all over again, and hopefully he can he'll be healthy, and he can even come back and participate in this particular series and contribute the way we know he can. But in regards to the game, I mean, look, do you just chalk it up to JR got really hot, and then the I felt like the refs kind of played a factor, when it was tied at 63, and then that avalanche came, and then it was all over. Like, what do you? Man, listen, Jason Phillips took over that game, man. Like, you didn't. I'm not the only one that felt that way. Like, look, if you go on Twitter and go back to that time in the game at 63-63, everybody was talking about it.
Yeah. No, here's my thing. First of all, yes, I agree. The stretch where the refs just made every single call, but I don't think it was in one favor or the other. I think everyone was just upset.
No. But well, look, it did seem like there were a couple of things that look, and again, this isn't the reason they lost. The reason they lost is because J.R. Smith went absolutely out of his mind, okay? But right before that is when Jason Phillips teed up Paul Millsap for no reason. There seemed to be a couple of calls that
he teed him up. He teed him up for a reason. He called a foul for no reason. But the tee was the guy walked up on him and said, "Are you effing kidding me?" Like, with a real aggressive. I mean, he got teed up. That tee was legit.
I mean,
the tee was legit.
I mean,
dude, he was belligerent.
That happens
right
every game, man. Come on,
you can't
stuff like that happens.
Dude, you can't run up on a ref cussing. Like, you just can't do that. You can do it from across. Can't do it. You can do it from across the floor. You can't do it right there in his proximity, like run up on him while his back is turned to you. That technical foul, I get. I'm not gonna complain about that one. Now, if you want to complain about the foul that led to that's a bogus call.
Well, look, there's no question.
Yeah.
There's no question that was an awful call. But that's kind of my point, is that that was, man, look, everybody in the arena and everybody watching knew that was a terrible call. So we've seen this from refs at times. When they know they've blown it, they will take some of the abuse from the guys because they know they've blown it. And Jason Phillips all of a sudden got Joey Crawford syndrome and kind of took the game over for a stretch. Him and Scott Foster, who neither guy did a really good job yesterday. But look, that's not the reason they lost. That's not the reason they lost.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying
I don't like dwelling on it.
Right, but that's where the momentum changed. Like, there's no arguing that. And then that's when JR went off, and that really is what cemented the game.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. Like, is the refs or the ref doing that got him going? Like, no, man, it had nothing to do with that. The one didn't have anything to do with the other. Like, the one,
I'm not saying it's correlation, not necessarily causation. But what I'm telling you is that that's the point in the game where everything flipped. That's it. That's all I'm telling you.
All right. I mean, I still kind of feel like you are assigning some sort of credit/blame to that rash of ref calls that happened. And I'm not. I'm telling you that there are two separate issues here. Number one, the refs were terrible at that. There was a stretch there for a few minutes at 63-all where they were terrible. You almost felt like Atlanta couldn't do anything right there in their eyes. It did feel that way. Then, with that aside, because they made several really questionable calls and some of them really bad, like egregiously bad calls.
And then
I thought
J.R. Smith went crazy. Two separate issues.
Okay, well, as far as the rest go, I thought LeBron caught a bunch of calls that were kind of not necessarily playoff level foul calls.
Which one?
And so there was the offensive foul he tried to draw in the was it the second quarter? It was his
Against
third
Millsap?
foul. Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's a non-call, but to give him a foul call for it, I thought was ridiculous.
Okay. I mean, the one
I
on
thought
Bazemore he deserved. I mean, he hooked him, and good Lord, it looked like he was trying to do some other stuff to him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the one against Millsap.
The Bazemore one looked like he was a proctologist all of a sudden.
Yeah, man. That's a little too graphic. You know, I don't know. I just, yeah, exactly. I don't think the refs played that big. I think they played a role in terms of our enjoyment of the game, where they just had a rash and they just started calling a bunch of things, real or imagined. But in terms of if I'm Atlanta tomorrow or today, I'm not looking at like, oh man, Jason Phillips really screwed us over. I'm thinking about all the other things that went wrong in that game.
No, a lot of other things went wrong in the game. You're harping on the fact that I brought up the officials, but there was a stretch where everyone was complaining about the officials.
We were complaining because they made a lot of calls, not because every call was awful and in Atlanta's and against Atlanta's favor.
I don't necessarily think that everyone felt that way. If you go back on Twitter last night, I think a lot of people, even in the media, were like, "Ooh, I don't know about that."
That's because all y'all think Atlanta to win. That's why. Let's get to the heart of the topic. You guys will see your pick go down in flames. And me and C.J. McCollum are going to be living life large. So we picked the Cavs in 5, and it's off to a great start.
Listen, let me tell you something. I'm gonna teach you, young media Padawan. Sometimes the best thing that could happen is being wrong when it comes to predictions. Okay, that's actually the best thing that can happen for you at times.
How's that? How's that the best thing that could happen?
Why? Because then you get people coming back at you, and you get people listening to these podcasts, and you get people listening to your radio show, and wanting to yell and scream at the sports guy, hey, you were wrong! J.R. Smith is the biggest reason they won that game. There is no discussion about it. I brought up the refs because it was a problem yesterday. Everyone seemed to acknowledge it, except you for some reason. And, again, not the reason they lost. J.R. Smith's the biggest reason they lost. If you're Atlanta, what solace do you take from that? Is there anything you can take from that?
Well, first of all, let me put on my Stu God's voice and say, I thought the refs were fine. I didn't see anything, Dan. Maybe that's something to do with you. No, the solace that you can take from Atlanta is you can say that J.R. Smith will not have another game like that, right? That's the one game of series that he has where he goes nuts. And if we know anything about J.R. Smith, it's that he is wildly mercurial, and a game like this pretty much guarantees that next game he's going to be terrible, right? Because that's his life is peaks and valleys, and it's not really a steady ride at any point. The other thing you can look at is, even with all of that, they made a little bit of a run at the end because the Cavs played the prevent offense or prevent defense or whatever you want to call it.
Well, they went ISO.
They went ISO LeBron, and now it was terrible. I believe the number was 18 isolation plays, and that is by far the most of any player in any game in this postseason. So if you're Atlanta, you know that Cleveland pretty much got gassed off of a hot streak from one player and then tried to milk the clock after that and really didn't have great offense there. And so, absent that hot streak, you would think to yourself, Atlanta, well, we can probably come back in the next game and beat them unless Kyrie Irving goes off or something like that. I guess and then obviously the biggest piece of positive news if you're the Hawks is that DeMar Carroll is I don't want to say just fine, but he's not as bad as everyone but me, I might point out, thought he was last night.
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess that gives Atlanta some saving grace. This series is over, though. I mean, after watching last night,
Hold on! Wait a second. Stop the presses. Press pause on the recording. Everybody just hold your horses for a second. Yesterday, George, you sent me a tweet. And kind of like this little FYI. And it says Warriors in 5 and Cavs, Hawks in 7, right? Is that what you had?
Mm-hmm.
And it took one game. Not even like a solid. You've already acknowledged that the refs had something to do with it. You acknowledge that J.R. Smith had the game of his life. And you've already gotten off the bandwagon. That's got to be the quickest bandwagon abandonment I've ever seen in my life.
I can recognize what I can recognize. My eyes don't deceive me in those situations. You know what I mean? Like, that's just it. Like, this series is not... Look, there's no way... I mean, barring LeBron getting hurt, Cleveland is not losing this series.
Yo, this is... we've got to mark this down. Like, George Sedano, Hawks fandom. Born January 15th, 2015. Died May 21st, 2015. It was a hell of a ride. I feel like we have to have, like, the Letterman closing sequence with the Foo Fighters playing and like highlights of George caping for the Hawks throughout the year.
Just Everlong in the background.
Yeah. Wow, man.
Hey, listen, I'm willing to call it like I see it. Because here's what it is. Yeah, because all I get is yesterday, like insecure Cleveland fan. Why don't you ever say anything good about our team? Why is it you never ever say anything good? And I'm like, yo, go on my Twitter timeline. I picked your team to win the last series. Like, when is that? Is that not a good thing? Like, I don't even understand the last people sometimes. Right, but my point is, they say I never say anything good. I just picked you to win a series just like 2 weeks ago. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. But they're so insecure and just so silly that like I told one guy, look, now because you're so annoying about it, now I'm never going to say anything positive. At worst, it's going to be neutral.
That's my take with Houston, by the way. That's how I deal with Houston. Like, all year long, I'm like, James Harden has been great. He's had MVP caliber year. This team has really improved defensively. They've been playing really well. But because I don't pick the Rockets in certain matchups, like the entire state of Texas believes that I have to.
The funny thing is, I don't know how many other times I can say over the span of the entire season on this podcast, on my radio show, which, by the way, you can download the podcast, the Sedano Show, ESPN.com/PodCenter or on iTunes. I don't know how many times I've said LeBron is the best player on the planet. LeBron's the best player on the planet. LeBron's the best player on the planet. But whatever. You hear what you want to hear. Anyhow.
You hate LeBron, though. You hate LeBron because he left Miami.
Right. Even though I call him the best player on the planet a million times. Yeah. But anyway, I don't know. I don't see it. That's it. One game is enough, man. Like, I feel like I don't. Jeff Teague, to me, played really well. Without DeMarre Carroll being 100%, and look, at this point, even if he comes back, he's not going to be 100%. I don't think he's going to be enough of a factor, even if he plays. And if your strategy is that now you're really going to have to use Millsap to guard LeBron or Kent Bazemore, guys like that, like, you're in trouble. Like that, there's no chance they're winning that series.
By the way, I'm glad you brought that up. I think one of the things that happened yesterday during that run, before Cleveland completely shut down, I think Millsap lost his head a little. Mm-hmm. I think he got into like this mano-a-mano macho thing with LeBron and like completely got out of his game. And I don't know if, that was before the technical. I mean, that was after the technical that already happened, so I don't think it led to his technical, but I definitely think like he lost it for a second there, and then he's trying to guard LeBron full court like he's Patrick Beverly or something, and I'm just thinking to myself, what's wrong with you, man? Somebody needs to grab him and calm him down. And you could see, it's funny, the refs had so many of these ticky-tack calls, but then every time they went down court, LeBron and Millsap were like in arm-to-arm combat. I was shocked that nobody was bringing it up. These guys were literally like hand-to-hand, like hitting each other and stuff like that, and they just kind of let it all slide. So I think Millsap, by the way, I said he should be a pretty good or a decent option defensively against LeBron, but it can't be, you can't do it on LeBron's terms where you're trying to be a guard with him. You've got to be smart. You got to, kind of back off him a little bit. He's been shooting terrible all playoffs long, so I don't even know why you would come up on him. Right. Why would you back up off him? Yeah. So that's an adjustment to look forward to in game 2 is how Millsap adjusts the way he defends LeBron. I think Bazemore played well. Hey, dude, I think he played well. He doesn't give you the shooting.
Right.
The shooting
he played well yesterday. But the reality is you can't count on Ken Bazemore for the rest of this series if DeMarre Carroll can't play.
Man. I mean, I don't know. I see. To me, I remember Kent Bazemore in Golden State in the playoffs 2 years ago, and on short notice he'd come in and he would he'd give you good minutes. So I think he's not like Mike Scott to me. Like Mike Scott is a guy that I can't count on. I think Kent
Agreed,
Bazemore
100%.
can come in and play rotation minutes for you, but obviously it's not ideal. I get what you're saying. It's not ideal.
That's all I'm saying. Like if he has to play a heavier load because DeMarre Carroll is not going to be there or he'll be limited. Come on, that's not going to work either, you know.
By the way, the other thing, and I say this every time, and I get all these Hawks fans who get really sensitive when I say this. Dennis Schroeder, what's the appeal? Like I get it, he's 21 and on, but at some point, someone's got to grab his skinny, scrawny little behind and say, "Dude, pass the rock. You are not freaking Kobe." It is frustrating beyond frustrating to watch him play. For me, at least. This is a judgment of his. Yeah. No, I was going to say I'm not judging his career or his future or anything. I'm just saying right now he is the most frustrating player to watch every time he comes on the floor.
Hashtag hate hard.
You're hating hard, but it's deserved at times. Look, defensively, he's really good. Like no one's going to deny that. And he is at times shows the ability to really be a guy who can get to the paint and get into the get to the rim with ease. Obviously, that last play at the end of the half was a smart play. He saw how much time was there on the clock and gave Bazemore an opportunity to hit that shot. But there were a couple of times in that first half, at least 2 or 3 that I counted, that he had Kyle Korver open. And that pairing of those two guys is really bad. I think Haberstroh had the numbers where Korver is like plus, I don't remember the exact number, but something like plus 100 something when it's him and not Schroeder on the court together. And when it's him and Schroeder together, they're like minus 25. And there were a couple times he missed him wide open threes. He missed him. Like he didn't pass him the ball where he was wide open. And there weren't a lot of times yesterday where he was open. And a credit to Iman Shumpert for that. But when he's open, you got to find him. Like you can't miss him. And he missed him a couple times in the first half. They also got unlucky where he hit a couple of shots and there were some offensive fouls. So you combine all that together, there were at least 3, 4, maybe even 5 opportunities where you could have gotten Kyle Korver some good looks.
No, it's to me, it's just that you have one job, right? Anytime Kyle Korver is open, I feel like that's everybody's job on the court. You got one job at that point: get Korver the ball. And we talk about it. We usually talk about it from a defensive standpoint, right? Dude, whatever happens, you can't leave Kyle Korver. I said last night, can't remember who tried to cheat over the top. Was it Shumpert? Like you're chasing Korver on these screens, and then at some point, like, I'm gonna try to take this shortcut over the top, and of course he fades and he hits a 3. And we're talking about defensively, there are 2 guys, at least alive in the playoffs right now, that no matter what, you have to abandon regular defensive principles and make sure that this dude does not catch wide open. Kyle Korver and Steph Curry. But it's weird. In Schroeder's case, we have to explain it to him from the offensive end. Hey, there's one guy that no matter what, if he's wide open, you got to get him the ball. And that's Kyle Korver. And it's just shocking to me that here we are. This is the 13th game in the playoffs for the Hawks, on top of 82 games in the regular season. So 95 games in. The kid still doesn't get it. Like, it's still something that, oh, that's right, yeah, my bad, I forgot. Like, how is that something as a point guard you're still struggling with?
Yeah, I don't get it either, man. So, anyway, that's the deal with that. So we'll see what kind of adjustments Budenholzer makes, the coach of the year makes, in game number 2 in Atlanta on Friday night. So, or actually,
but to be clear,
Friday night.
Yeah, Friday night. But to be clear, George Sedano is pulling a Dido, and you're waving your white flag, right?
Dido. That's an excellent reference there.
Remember
one that's a bit dated, but not too dated. Excellent reference there by you. All right, let's get to these All-NBA teams before we get into stuff in regards to the Western Conference. So the All-NBA teams are out, and the first team is not really a surprise by anybody. Steph Curry, James Harden, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Marc Gasol. And your second team is Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, LaMarcus Aldridge, Boogie Cousins, and Pau Gasol. And your third team, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and Tim Duncan. Anyone you thought was left off?
Ooh, it's funny. I was surprised with all the Kawhi Leonard love that Kawhi wasn't on an All-NBA team. I thought this was his best season to date. I was surprised that, honestly, I was very surprised that nobody from the Hawks, not Millsap and not Horford, got on there. I thought they were deserving. And then after that, like you can make cases. Like John Wall, should he have been? Perhaps. But, I kind of get why. Jimmy Butler kind of lost steam towards the end of the year. But the big snubs, I would say, either Leonard or at least one guy from the Hawks to make any team. And the guy in question that I really looked at, I was like, really? He's going to be All-NBA?
Klay Thompson.
Was Pau Gasol.
Oh.
I was shocked that Pau Gasol made All-NBA. He had a good season. He had a bounce-back season. Did he have an All-NBA season? I don't think so. I was really shocked about that. I would definitely have given Millsap or Horford the nod over Pau. Because I think that was kind of like the sympathy vote. Like, oh, Pau, we thought you were done and washed. And here you are. You're not quite done and not quite washed.
Well, I mean, wait a second. I mean, he didn't even make third team. Like, he was second team, so he was pretty cemented in there.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand how he got in there. Like like I said, there are more deserved. I think because remember, Pau's a forward. So Kawhi Leonard, Paul Millsap, and Al Horford, I think they all had better years than he did. And
I think it's debatable. I don't think any of this stuff is a slam dunk. Even Klay Thompson, I think, was a bit of a surprise, only because he had such a great start to the year, and the second half of the year wasn't as good. Like you said, kind of like Jimmy Butler kind of ran out of steam at times a little bit. So that's why I thought you were going to say that. Who would I have had replace him?
Yeah.
Maybe John Wall. Maybe John Wall I would have had replace him.
That's fair.
That would have been, but again, I think you're splitting hairs with those guys. Like I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, Klay Thompson doesn't deserve to be third team All NBA." Not at all. I think he does deserve.
I guess that's my point. I think Pau, I don't think it's splitting hairs at all. I don't think Pau was one of the best. I don't think he's one of the best 15 front court guys in the NBA this year. I just don't.
See, I would disagree with that. I think it's a lot closer than you would see. I mean, he basically.
By the way,
him and Jimmy Butler basically carried that Bulls team. So I mean, I think that's part of it. But you're right. You can make the case for Millsap and Horford carrying the Hawks in stretches too. So look, I just think it's a lot closer than you do.
By the way, and speaking of low self-esteem fans, you spoke about this earlier. I tweeted, when it first came out, I tweeted to Nate Jones, my buddy Nate Jones. I said, "Hey man, aren't you shocked? Am I the only one who's shocked that Gasol made All NBA?" And instantly, I get a bunch of Memphis fans. No, it's not shocking at all that you would be shocked by that. I said, "How
and you're like, not Mark.
Are you when you pick when given the choice of two Gasols, a better Gasol and a old washed Gasol, you pick the better one because your low self-esteem self thought, he hates Memphis and he hates barbecue and Elvis and the blues and Justin Timberlake and Beale Street and Tony Allen and Grit and Grind and the Grindhouse and the Grindfather. Nah. That's all that's all you could say. It would be like me saying, like someone saying last year, or let's say if Dragic made it this year, say, "Oh, I can't believe Dragic made All NBA," and me jumping up and like, "Oh, why do you hate Zoran Dragic so much?" Like, it's just, come on, guys, really, given the choice of two Gasols, you just went immediately to Mark, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, man, it's shocking. It's shocking the amount of inferiority complexes built into people at some point. Where if they hear anything, remember the old trick? You'd say, "Hey, dummy," and the person would turn around like, "Oh, glad you know your name." That's exactly what some of these fans are like. Like, you just say something and then they say, well, why'd you say that about me? I'm like, I'm not talking about you, you low self-esteem.
What are we
I
talking
want to
about?
cuss so bad, man. Yeah, what are we talking about?
Don't do it, man. Don't do it. Well, it's a podcast. This is recorded. You can do it. We can always just bleep it out.
I'm not pulling a Michael Smith. Is that what you're saying? Michael Smith.
It's okay.
Shout out to Michael
listen,
Smith.
I'm just glad Michael
It happens
Smith
in
didn't miss a
basketball.
day. Thank you, Suits. Michael
Yeah.
Smith is the man. I love him. So I'm
Yeah.
glad he didn't miss a day. It could happen to any of us.
You know
We're all
what?
human, and it's live television.
But you know what that is? That's the double standard. Michael Smith has led an exemplary life, exemplary career, and so he makes a mistake, he absolutely deserves to get, a pass. Me, I'm like J.R. Smith. If I swing my arm back, nah, man, I'm getting like the 10-day suspension immediately.
Yeah, look, man, you create your own reputation there. I mean, that's all I'm saying. So, all right, let's get to speaking of defensive and, maybe not insecurity, but all defensive team, and it's not the Memphis fans like Amin was trying to point out. I love you, Memphis. I had you in my top 15 NBA cities, okay? Just remember that. We've got our all defensive teams. The first team, your boy Kawhi Leonard, got the most votes. Draymond Green, Tony Allen, DeAndre Jordan, and Chris Paul on first team. Now, let me ask you this. The Clippers were not a great defensive team. They were middle of the pack, basically. And they got 2 all first-team defenders. What does that say?
Oh, man, it says that Doc Rivers is the greatest carnival barker, salesman, whatever you want to call it. The guy who grabs that megaphone and says, step right up. DeAndre Jordan, observe, one of the greatest defensive players on the planet. And then everyone's like, whoa, it took you. P.T. Barnum said it. Why would he ever lie to me? That's pretty much what
Hashtag hate hard.
I was talking about this yesterday with Tom Haberstroh. I said, I think we can agree that DeAndre Jordan is a good defensive player. He's good. We're not saying he's garbage. But to call him one of the 5 best defensive players in the NBA, and one of the 3 best, I can't get with that. And this is when I talk about sometimes we exist in a bubble. People like you and me and Tom, and we exist in this little bubble because we all talk to each other and follow each other on Twitter, and we read and we watch game tape, and we understand stats and stuff. We think that everybody in basketball thinks like us. And the reality is there's a vast majority of the media and fans who don't think like us, who are just, for lack of a better term, simpletons. They are simpletons, right? Because if you think DeAndre Jordan was the best defensive center in the NBA this year, there really is no other word I can call you other than simpleton.
So who deserves it? Bogut?
Bogut, Gasol, Rudy Gobert. I mean, take your pick. They're lining up out the door.
Yeah.
That were better than that. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, not DeAndre Jordan. You had a wealth of other names you could pick. By the way, another funny tidbit that Tom dug up. Did you know that James Harden received not 1, but 2 all defensive votes? James Harden. Somebody watched the NBA for 82 games this year and surmised that James Harden was one of the 10 best defenders in basketball.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious.
Tom Cruise, I am absolutely serious. 2 people, not 1, 2 people.
Yeah, I don't understand that one. I got to be honest. Well, somebody voted for Manu Ginobili.
Come on. No, they didn't.
They did. Manu Ginobili got a vote.
See, here's my thing.
Listen. I love Manu. Okay,
Right.
Aquí mi patria, mi hermano hispano. Okay, Latino. But yeah, bro, no way. Listen,
Here's
no
my
chance.
thing. I don't like doing the forensic analysis of who voted for who. And here's the thing. Even though I called people simpletons for voting,
That was kind of mean. I got to be honest with you. Calling people
simpletons. It is kind of mean. It is kind of mean, but at least I can still see it because, again, at the end of the day, DeAndre Jordan is a good defensive player. He's not the best. He's not great, but he is good. And he's good for that team. I don't see how anyone watches Manu Ginobili and surmises, yo, should I give a vote to Damari Carroll or maybe should I give a vote to Klay Thompson or, there's this long, I mean, we have a lot of dudes in this league who are very good defensive players. And you say Manu Ginobili, I can't take you seriously at that point. At that point, there's got to be something else. It's not 2003, guys.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I'm sure there's other guys. If we actually parsed this thing, and we could probably look for it and just find where these votes went. But I don't have them in front. Oh, here we go. Actually, I do have it. I do have it. Give me a second. I can find it.
Here you go. Here we go.
Rajon Rondo received a vote this year.
Come on. Come on.
Manu Ginobili did receive a vote. Who else? Let me see. James Harden did get 2. You were right.
By the way, wait, before you go on, Rajon Rondo, the guy who said, I didn't play defense in Boston, but now I'll start trying. That guy got a vote. That guy got someone's vote of confidence. Jeez. Go on, please.
Ginobili to me is the most egregious. I don't think there's any question.
Really? More than Harden? More than Rondo?
Well, Harden getting 2. Harden getting 2 is pretty impressive, but
what about
Ginobili,
more than the dude who admitted? But the dude admitted he did not play defense. Like that to me should be the automatic. You can never make this list. At least not in this calendar year.
Yeah, that is pretty bad. How about George Hill getting a vote? George Hill, Indiana.
That's not as. I mean, I wouldn't.
I don't think it's as egregious, but it was just kind of a name that stuck out to me. But yeah, to me the worst are Harden and Manu Ginobili getting a vote for sure, and Rondo.
No, man, I gotta put Rondo's got to be in that list. Someone voted. Rondo by the end of the year. Well, I guess they voted. The votes were due April 15th, so you wouldn't have seen the playoffs.
You wouldn't have seen the postseason, right? So that wouldn't have mattered.
All right. But still, the fact that his introductory press conference talks about not playing defense is, I mean, it's unconscionable. And by the way, it's not like if you watch the Mavs. Here's the thing: even if you were a Mavs like Homer, you were hated. Like all those Mavs people in the organization or around, they all hated Rondo all year long. But they were just kind of like, this is the deal with the devil we had to make, Yeah. So for it to go all the way to the end and like somebody still, it has to be someone who likes Rondo who's not affiliated with Dallas at all, right? I wonder who it was. They're listed. I don't know. Let's not call out names, man. That's just silly.
No, I don't have the list here. I just have the votes, so I don't have who voted for it.
That's good. You can look up the names, but I don't think we should do that.
No, I don't. Well, I don't care to do that, to be honest. I don't care that much. So anyway, all right, coming up in 60 seconds, we'll get into tonight's game. It is Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals. Steph Curry getting a fine. What to expect from Dwight and the Rockets. We'll get to that in 60 seconds here on the NBA Lockdown podcast.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Welcome back to the NBA Lockdown podcast. Alongside Amin, Elhassan, I'm George Sedano. So Warriors looking to go up 2-0. We got Steph Curry fined for flopping. And your boy Steve Kerr, morally outraged, by the flop fine, calling out Jamal Crawford, and then I think he caught himself. He said Jamal Crawford does it all the time, and he mentioned even Westbrook does it from time to time, and then he's like, but everybody does it. So I don't understand why they singled out Steph.
Yeah, no, Steve went a little bit off the rails.
Well, let's hear it.
I don't know.
Like, those didn't hear it.
Okay.
Those didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Here's Kerr.
I am morally outraged. These plays happen every day. I don't think a game goes by where Jamal Crawford doesn't flop 6 times on his three-point shots. It's part of the game. And I don't blame him for doing it because a lot of times the refs call it. Russell Westbrook does it. Everybody does it. So all of a sudden, just randomly to find Steph just seems kind of strange. Or are we just choosing one time to do this? You can pick out flops every single game from half the guys out on the floor. So it just seems sort of random.
I mean, here's my thing. I don't think we're talking about $5,000 here, right? Like, I don't think it should matter. Guys should just go out there and play, and that's kind of like the cost of business, right? You do these things because you hope to attract a foul call, and if it doesn't, oh well. And if you get the call and you get fined, oh well. He didn't get the call, he got fined. But at the end of the day, it's like, what are we talking about here? You know, it's just, all right. You know, so he got fined this one time. He got the slap on the wrist. They're going to go out. They're going to play. It's not like it's going to change anybody's behavior out there on the court.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Like, I just think it's all to do about nothing. But in regards to the series, how do you view it? Because I look at it as, yes, Steph had a great game. And obviously, I'm sure you guys spent a lot of time talking about his daughter yesterday. We're not going to necessarily do that today because I just don't think it's necessary at this point. But Clay didn't have a very good game. Bogut was in foul trouble most of that game. I know Sean stepped up, and good Lord, man, who can't be happy for Sean Livingston considering everything he's been through? But I don't think the Warriors necessarily played a very good game, and I felt like that was arguably the best punch that Houston had, at least early in that game, and then all of a sudden, you know, the Warriors just kind of smacked them right back. Now, Dwight being hurt and being limited, it seemed like, in the second half, certainly plays a factor. I think it certainly plays a factor moving forward. I felt like Dwight needed a Herculean-type throwback 2009 type effort for the Rockets to have a chance to win this series. You and I talked about this on my radio show. But ultimately, I don't think this is going to be much of a competitive series. And if Dwight is hurt and even remotely limited, then I think it becomes a very, very quick series.
Yeah, here's my thing. A lot of people pointed to well, Dwight got hurt. No, I think if you think that it was because Dwight got hurt, you're missing the point of how Golden State beat the Rockets, and they beat them when they sat Bogut down. They went small.
When Draymond Green went to the
five.
Yeah.
And that lineup is unstoppable. And P.S., in case you're wondering, that's the lineup that KO'd Houston every time in their 4 games because they can't go small ball with them. And if you play big, you're basically saying, Dwight, you're going to have to guard one of these 5 guys on the perimeter because they're going to go all 5 out. And they're going to keep moving and keep shifting. And Dwight just doesn't flourish in those kind of situations. And so, to me, you know, this all came down to Golden State does what Golden State did what Golden State does, which is we're going to go small. We're going to shut you down defensively when we go small. Their best defensive lineup is like when Draymond's at the 5. They're allowing like 95 points per 100 possessions. And then from there, we'll get our easy buckets in transition. And they did it at the end of the second quarter, and they did it at the end of the game. And that was good night, sweet prince. If you're Houston, here's the other problem. If you're Houston, you're looking at Harden's performance in the fourth quarter, and what a performance it was. But we all know Daryl Morey's mad scientist plan. And I'm pretty sure nowhere in those blueprints does it say, let's take 4 or 5 mid-range jumpers contested in a row. That just isn't their game plan. Harden went off the script and did what he does as a great individual offensive talent. The problem with that is, A, if I'm Golden State, I live with those shots, no problem. And B, everybody else turns into a spectator. They're just sitting there on the perimeter. Well, I hope he passes me the ball, boss. You know, and that's not good for other guys' rhythm. It's not good for overall team offense, and it's not good anytime Harden has to sit. They couldn't score without him on the floor unless it was out of defensive stops.
Yeah. Listen, again, I just don't see anything that leads me to believe that this series is going to be a long series. I think that they can't match up with them, as you pointed out, when they go small. Their advantage inherently is if they go big, ideally, but against this team, there is no such advantage. So I think I give Houston a game because out of courtesy, because I think they can win one at home. But I think that we're going to see basically, I think we saw Golden State kind of I don't want to say sleepwalk through the first, quarter and a half or whatnot, but they looked a little sluggish, I think. They seemed like, and I think Kerr mentioned this, where it felt like they were feeling it out, and the Rockets coming off a 7-game series were just sharp. You know what I mean? Like they were ready to go, and then it just took them a little while to kind of get back in gear. And honestly, I was surprised it took Kerr that long to put Draymond at the 5 and just make that thing go the way it did. But once he did that, he realizes that's it. That's his inherent advantage, and that's it. Like I just don't, I don't really have much to add to what you said because I don't feel like this is going to be a very competitive series. Now the games may be competitive potentially, or more competitive than we saw in the regular season, but I just don't think from a series perspective this is going to be very competitive.
You want to hear something weird? I think deep down, it's odd. Even as successful as they've been every single time, deep down, I don't think Kerr really believes in that Draymond at the 5 thing. I think he's always fearing one of these days they're going to figure it out and we're just going to get annihilated on the inside. Because every time, it's like you said, he's reluctant to turn to the, fine, I guess we'll try it. And then it works magnificently every time. So I think that's funny. But as far as these goes, I mean, we're talking about two teams. One is vastly better than the other one. And when you're in that situation, the only way you're going to win is if you can junk it up and change and basically make it into guerrilla warfare. Because if we're just going to play basketball, you're going to kick my tail every single time. But if we can ugly the game up, like Memphis tried to ugly the game up, and that worked for a little bit until they realized one of their ugliest guys just isn't very good offensively. But that's the struggle, I guess, is how can Houston ugly this game up to put in their advantage, and the problem is their advantage is exactly what Golden State wants to play, so I'm not certain that can happen. But here's something completely different. I'm watching the game with my folks. My parents are in town. They're not really huge basketball fans, and I love hearing the commentary. Like my dad was just marveled at the Golden State crowd. Like they never sit down, huh? They're just in it the whole time. My mom, on the other hand, refused to believe that James Harden beard was real. She's saying if it's not glued on, then she thinks that there's some heavy dye action going, maybe some black ice, maybe that spray that LeBron uses to make it look like he still has hair. She thinks something like that is happening in the beard. I wanted to know, George, have you ever watched basketball with your folks? If so, are they huge fans? If not, do they have funny kind of observations like that?
Yeah, usually my mom tends to have the funnier observations because my dad's like a big sports fan. So he doesn't really, other than just, yelling and screaming and cursing out a player who may not be doing something he wants him to do for his team. Like he's kind of harder on his own teams than he is anyone else. Like he's unreasonably hard on his own teams. But my mom will just be she'll make comments about different players, she said, she asked me one time if Dirk had veneers. That was one time, when he was playing.
Hashtag hate hard.
And I'm like, I don't know. I've never asked him that. I covered obviously a couple of finals that he was in. Right. And I think, and she one time she said to me that she thought that, she said to me, Rasheed Wallace is kind of scary, huh? I think his own teammates are afraid of him. And I said, you know what? I don't know. That's probably a good question. I don't know if all his teammates are afraid of him. But I would certainly say they at least have a healthy respect for him, right? That would be the way I would describe it. But she did ask me that, if Rasheed Wallace's teammates were afraid of him, because he looks like someone that you should be afraid of. And I was like, I thought that was funny. And I asked her, why do you think he's afraid? You should be afraid of him. She goes, because his eyes make me feel like they're like cartoon character eyes. So I'm like, you want to be afraid of the cartoon character eyes. But really, that's just about it. There's really not much there.
My parents' favorite pastime, and this is when they're watching TV, but it seems to manifest itself more whenever they're watching sports, is trying to identify what family member looks like a certain player. Like Steph Curry, within 2 seconds of seeing Steph Curry, my mom was like, he looks like your uncle. I'm like, oh man, like, and the funny thing is, like, she's right. He does look like my uncle, man. It's kind of creepy, actually. Now that I see him, I can't not see my uncle. But my parents played it like literally every single person. He looks like so-and-so's nephew. You know, the boy that married so-and-so. Like, oh, God, man. It's pretty hilarious. But here's another thing. My dad made this observation. And one of the things beyond laughing, I always wonder if this is how the casual fan thinks. My dad said, which game is this? I said, it's game 1. He's like, of 7? I'm like, well, best of 7. So it could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 6, it could be 7. He said, that's too many games. Why 7? Why not best of 5? That's a lot more reasonable. And not that I think that he's right, but I wonder, do you think that's what the casual fan thinks? Like when they turn on TV, like, game 1, oh, this is going to last forever.
Yeah, it is interesting that's maybe they do think that way, that game 1 is going to last forever. Yeah, I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, maybe you may be onto something.
Yeah, the other thing was my sister was asking, hey, are we going to get something to eat? And I said, as soon as this game's over, there's only like 5 minutes left in the game. And my dad makes this quip, like, that means it'll be 40 minutes from now. I said, oh, like, don't be that guy. Oh. Yeah, exactly. But now I'm beginning to think my dad is like a secret basketball hater. Maybe that's what's going on here. But, hey, that's going to do it for Parents Say the Darndest Things on NBA LockDown.
Yeah. And that'll, I think, do it for us. So tune in tomorrow. Again, the podcast 5 days a week here during the postseason, weekdays, Monday through Friday. I'll be back tomorrow. I don't know if you'll be back tomorrow, Amin. Will you be back tomorrow?
Perhaps. That's the plan.
Oh, look at that. Perhaps. It's a tease, a 24-hour tease for you that maybe Amin will join us. And Carrie and Ramona will be with us as well tomorrow, so we should have some fun. I'm sure Carrie is still glowing from the Lakers getting the number 2 pick in the NBA draft, in the upcoming draft here in June. So thanks to Amin. Of course, you can follow him on Twitter at Amin ESPN, AMIN ESPN, and myself at Sedano ESPN. That's SEDANO ESPN. We'll talk to you tomorrow. You guys have a great night and enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you again. See ya.
Thanks for listening to NBA Lockdown on ESPN Radio. For more great podcasts, check out the Pod Center page on ESPNRadio.com. Miguel Cabrera leads the Detroit Tigers into Anaheim to face Mike Trout and the Los Angeles Angels. The pregame's at 7 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN2 and on ESPN Radio.